Welcome to the Combat Intelligent Athlete Show, where we talk and punch our way through achieving peak performance on the mat, surviving the streets, and how to take on the martial arts of everyday life and win. And now, here is your host, Coach Rodney King.
Tony Blauer, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing, dude. I am doing. I got texted by a buddy this morning, actually Mike Bledsoe from Barbell Shrug. He said, "Hey, man, how's life?" And I said, "Interesting." And he answered back going, "I love that answer." You know,
that's what it is. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'm excited to be talking to you, as always. I know you're a busy man. I guess a good place to start, and it feels kind of silly for me to be asking this from you, right? To kind of give us a brief, and I mean a brief history of your martial arts background, but I'm assuming that there are people out there that are not going to know who you are, so that's probably a good place to start.
So a brief history. I grew up in the 60s. I was infatuated with Green Hornet and Wild Wild West and all things fighting. I had this crazy relationship with fear. I don't understand why I was infatuated with it. I don't know if that's even a good word, but I was so scared of being afraid, and that, of course, made me more afraid, which developed a very special relationship with fear and fear management. And for some reason, the relationship to it was, it wasn't public speaking, it was violence. And so any TV show that had any type of fighting in it, transfixed me. And that was, for your listeners and you asking me like how, what my martial art background is like, why would I talk about a TV stories? You need to understand that I was glued to the TV and I was actually like studying like the fight and the movement. And, so fast forward a few years, I started wrestling in school. That was the only type of force on force, type of training there was. And I, naturally gravitated towards it. I was a good athlete. I was good at it, but I was scared shitless every time I was in a match. Anytime I was wrestling, I jumped to 1973. Bruce Lee passes away. The world, suddenly goes crazy for martial arts, and a Taekwondo school opened up near me. It was the only school in the area. And I jumped in there. I signed up there, and I was there like every single day I could be. And I set up a gym in my basement. I worked out literally before I would get out of bed, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth. I had a little ritual in the morning where I would, beat the crap out of a Makiwara that I had, slid under my bed. I'd roll out of bed. I'd do push-ups. I would do, shadow boxing in the room and then make my way to the bathroom. And I did that for years. I got into my first real, not dangerous, I guess every fight's dangerous, but, you're 15, 16 years old in school. And, back then, these days, of course, like that can get you killed. Like fighting is not the same as it was back in the day. And I got into a confrontation, and I had my back to the wall, and this guy was like freaking out in front of me, and I was trying to verbally diffuse this. And I remember just thinking over and over again how much I love martial arts. And I remember my instructor saying, if I hear of any of you, getting into fights outside the school that aren't real self-defense, real credible threats, you're expelled, you're done. And I was like, man, like this is kind of borderline. This is like, it's like a stupid fight in school. It's an ego fight. So I'm trying to diffuse it. And, but the guy was like really in my face, and he was too far to knee and too close to kick. And that was confusing me, like the mathematics of that. And I realized after that fight, I had no hands. So I immediately went and sought out boxing instruction. So I went from wrestling to Taekwondo to boxing. And then, I always had a passion for teaching. I taught tennis. I taught skiing. I remember when I was a teenager, my mom, I was sitting on the floor stretching, looking at Bruce Lee magazines, and my mom comes by and says, "Hey, do you know what you're going to do when you're older? Like, you're going to go into your dad's business, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, what are you going to be, And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, Mom, I'm going to actually, teach martial arts. I'm going to be like Bruce Lee. I'm going to develop my own self-defense style. And she smiles at me and she'd pat me on the top of my head and said, okay, honey, we'll talk about this when you're older. And, so I had that seed planted. I ended up going to work for my father when I was 17, and I started teaching. Just some of the guys in the shipping area knew that I trained, and we started working out and we would get together like after work and train. And then one of my dad's top clients asked me to teach his son some kind of like, self-defense stuff because he was having a bully issue at school. This is like 1980. And I said, sure. And he wanted to pay me. I said, I don't want your money. You're a friend of the family's, blah, blah, blah. He forces in my hand. He says, look, I want you to take this seriously. I don't want this as a favor. And this is like 1980. I'm making like $4.25 an hour. And he says, I'm going to pay you $20. So I do the math quickly. I go, that must be like, like 4 or 5 lessons, right? He goes, I'll pay you $20, per class. And I'm like, what? And, it was funny, but I went and I started training this kid, and he ended up having a fight about 3 months after I started training him and got his ass kicked. And in that moment when he described what happened, and what was I teaching him? I was teaching him kicking. I was teaching him boxing. I was teaching him wrestling. We were combining and stuff. This was like this is 13 years before the UFC, right? This is like pre any acronym for MMA, but we were blending all that stuff. And if you look at, I don't know if you've ever seen my original videotape Forging a Fighting System, and then the series that we did with Panther Productions in 1986. We were doing mixed martial arts back then. There was just no name for it. And so, he comes back from school and describes this fight where this guy had gotten physical, and my student Mitch had grabbed the guy, slammed him against a locker bank, and said, "Hey man, just leave me the fuck alone. I don't even know, you've been bugging me since school started. I don't even know who you are. Blah blah blah." And he pauses, and I go, "And what happened?" He goes, he just dropped me with a left hook. I'm like, dude, why didn't you slip or block or check or do it like any of the stuff that we practiced? And when he describes this, Rodney, is he had grabbed the guy with his left hand and he was holding his school books with his right hand, right? And so, he just got your head is just standing there. Imagine if you had to box with somebody and you love boxing and integrated in your training. Imagine if you had to box somebody while holding shit in your hands, or one arm on the guy and it's just ridiculous. Your head is totally exposed. But I realized in that moment it was almost like the god of self-defense hit me with a lightning bolt, and I actually said to myself, in my head, oh my God, we teach self-defense wrong. We meaning the world, because everything we teach is done from this perspective that technique is king, that we need to focus on these complex motor skills. And then when we get good at these complex motor skills, we're going to get good at being able to protect ourselves or compete in tournaments or whatever the goal was. And for self-defense, and I'm racing off on one of my tangents, but it's I always tell people, don't confuse technical with tactical, that you absolutely need to manage your fear, and your movement's going to be primal gross motor if it's a real dangerous threat. Anyways, all of that to say, that raced through my head, probably not as clearly as I just explained it right now, when I was 20. And I immediately, in his room when he was telling, because we do private lessons, in his room, I actually said, "Are those your books there?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Grab them, grab me, and let's replicate, let's reverse engineer this." And we worked on all these different angles, and I've never, literally from that day forward, never taught a class where we didn't start with and discuss what is the scenario, what is the context, what is the level of force that's reasonable for the situation. Because when you understand that blueprint, you understand the exit strategies. Anyways, all of that, that became that journey over 14, 15 years led to our approach to scenario-based training.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I want to reflect on something that you said right in the beginning there. You were talking about fear. you've been doing a lot of work lately that I've noticed about embracing and conquering fear. Can you shed some light on that? I mean, because, where would be a starting point to talk about this?
Yeah, I always segue in and I make the joke. You remember the No Fear T-shirt company?
Yes.
So, they're still around and they're working with, like motocross and adrenaline sports and stuff like that. And so I make this joke when I do we have a seminar called No Fear, but we spell it KNOW. And the message there, the joke I make is I go, hey, I bought all those shirts, but guess what? I was still afraid. They must have been defective printing or something, and people giggle. And I go, like, the idea that there's a place of no fear, NOFEAR, actually, in my mind, perpetuates some fear or potential fear. Because the day that you're off balance, the day that you're not feeling right and you get some sort of physiological ping, a little adrenaline, palm a little sweaty, you're breathing a little bit different, you unconsciously wonder, am I really prepared? Am I ready to go? And I've talked to, and I've coached from professional MMA guys to boxers to CrossFit athletes, and it's amazing the relationship with fear. It's amazing how people, I tell the story in the seminar where I was down at Fort Bragg working with the military, got in a couple of days early, and I'm at a coffee shop with some of the guys, and they asked me if I want to go jumping, and I know exactly what they mean, and I say to them, no, I'm okay. I know how to jump up and down. They go, ha ha ha, like skydiving, man. I go, yeah, I know what you meant. I go, look, I did it twice as an experiment in managing fear because I'm not good with heights, and I did it twice. Once to make, once I thought was maybe an accident that I jumped out of the airplane. The second time I knew I did it on purpose, and they said, come on, man, what are you afraid? I thought you're like the fear management guy. I said, yeah, I'm managing my fear by not going and jumping out of an airplane today. And, they laughed. I said, you don't have any fear when you do this? And they go, no, man, I love it. And I said, okay, so let me pack your chute for you. And he went, fuck that. And I went, there's fear, right? And it was when you stress inoculate, when you do something enough, you don't call it fear anymore. It becomes part of your preparation, part of your ritual, your checks and balances, your checklist and all the things that you need to do. And so, all of this is, and I tell people, fear throttles everything we do in our lives, from who we talk to, therefore who we marry, where we live, how much money we make, how much weight you lift, and whether or not you protect yourself, whether or not you defend yourself or your family. When I've talked to thousands and thousands of victims of violence and victors of violence as well, and what I've noticed, the common thread isn't whether somebody did Wing Chun or Thai boxing or Krav Maga. The common thread is always mindset. The common thread is always their ability to manage fear. In fact, the shooting I just posted this morning, the shooting that just happened in Texas, and where the gunman was stopped by, the plumber, and I say plumber because it's important to connect to that. If you look at the video and you look at the picture, but the headline of the story was, I was scared to death. And the message here is that in spite of the fear, the overwhelming fear to run away from the danger, this guy ran towards the danger. And it's compelling to listen to that. And that's kind of been my epiphany in the last couple of years, where people ask me, hey, if you only had an hour to spend with somebody, what would you teach them? What would be the move? And I go, the move would be how to manage fear, because I believe that we're all human weapon systems. I believe every one of us, who wants to survive will figure it out if we can only get out of the fear loop, if we can get past the psychology of fear, not the biology of fear, the physiology of fear. And that's the big distinction we make in our courses, Rodney, is that where most people will focus on, they'll say fight or flight or freeze, and they talk about, heart rate, and all of that is really fucking irrelevant. In the moment, the only thing that is relevant is what is your inner voice telling you to do. If it's like saying they're going, oh, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, or is there indignation? Fuck this. I'm out of here. Let's go. Let's move. And teaching people how to do that really isn't as technical or challenging as one would think. It's really about just getting the story right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just kind of thinking on what you were saying. I mean, obviously, the part of the physiology, like you said, that's important, but that's going to happen regardless, right? Especially if in a situation, as you noted, where you're unprepared and you have no preparation for it. Your physiological response to danger is going to kick off. And so, as you rightfully say, the only thing then that you are likely going to have any kind of option in changing is the way that you're thinking about the experience or the situation as it's unfolding.
And ideally, as I wrote recently, you can think about how you're going to think about this stuff before or after. One of our mottos is experience is something you get shortly after you need it. And the idea is to kind of think about what are the scenarios that could happen to me? Where could violence or danger exist in my life, in my routine? And then and it's a scary thought because it's to take responsibility for your personal safety is, for some reason, and I know that, you've been teaching for many, many years, and so you can relate to this. Like, how many people have you talked to when they find out you teach self-defense go, oh yeah, like I'll come see you Saturday, or I got to get in shape first and then I'll come see you, but they never show up. And if we had a buck for every person we talked to that said they wanted to learn how to defend themselves, we wouldn't be worrying about money. Most people avoid it like the plague. And it's an interesting thing. And the reason why, and ironically, if you peel that onion, it's fear again. It's fear of fear. And so, if I say to someone, well, why didn't you show up for class, or why aren't you doing this training? Like, the answers, while many, all boil down to the core of it is I'm afraid. I'm afraid to find out I suck. I'm afraid to find out I'm good. I'm afraid of violence. I'm afraid of fear. I'm afraid of contact. It all comes out. And as grown adults, and I really believe this, it's one of the things that I think deeply on, that if we were teaching our kids how to manage fear at a young age, how to look at fear, how to get to know fear, KNRW fear, and that's the message: get to know fear, and obviously not being cavalier and crazy about it. There's a science and a psychology to approaching it, but if you learn to look at it, what you're doing is you're expanding your discomfort zone, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly you've got all these experiences. And that changes your awareness, and it changes how you look at things in life.
How much of that, this aspect you're talking about, that people are fearful, how much of that is also indoctrinated early on when, through the schooling system? It's not uncommon, for example, to be constantly told not to make mistakes. Right, so people are not allowed to make mistakes, and they have to always meet a certain kind of criteria. But it's in, as you probably have seen through your own experience, it's through making those mistakes that you actually learn about the possibilities.
100%. I mean, like, even in my class where people have signed up and paid, I start off, I go, hey, there's no such thing as a stupid question. What's stupid is not asking a question, blah, 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 blah. And most people have no questions. But then at a break, like 5 people will come up and go, hey, I got a question. And the first time that happens, I stop everybody. I go, look, there's 4 people standing here with like secret private questions. And I'm like, I just asked everybody before the break, does anyone have any questions about what we just covered? And nobody put their hand up, but you all had questions. Well, why don't you put your hand up? Because you're afraid. You're afraid your question's stupid. You're afraid you're going to get rejected. You're afraid you're going to look, dumb in front of. And that is taught 100% in school. Where you put your hand up as a child, and the teacher goes, "Oh, Rodney, I guess you didn't read your homework last night." No, that's however it's said. You go, "Geez, I'm not doing that again." So it's definitely and even. We got a bigger problem right now with the entitled generation, where people just think the world owes them a living, and the world owes them, safety, and the world owes them, and don't get me started on that. But all of that is in my opinion conditioned. If we go back a couple of 100 years, maybe not even that long ago, people knew how to protect themselves. They knew how to hunt. They knew how to fish. They understood, basic survival. They understood what plants you could eat and what plants you couldn't eat. Right? We don't have to go back that long where we weren't living on the inside of the walls. There were no walls, right? And so when we started getting, I call it, we've been domesticated. When we started living inside walls, and we had certain people who were our cavalry, and that's where we now to quote a line from a podcast I did a while back, where the host said to me, what you're basically saying is people can't outsource their safety, and I love that term, and that's what we've gotten used to, is just outsourcing, our safety. But it all kicks back to not just the school system, but and it's starting to change now for the most horrific and unfortunate reasons. But now you're finally getting police and other people saying, man, you better know how to do shit on your own, because as much as we'd like to be there to help and stop it, we're minutes away, right? So, I was listening to a talk. I actually shared it on my Facebook page where the gentleman, in the video said, the first responders who get there are like, they're taking pictures of dead bodies. Like, they're not, they're not in many cases, they're engaging in the threat, and particularly in the, active shooter type scenario where the intention is to do as much damage and then kill yourself. So yeah, it's a big problem in society, and we are completely screwed. The world is upside down right now, and we need to change that, and it's going to take more than guys like you and me, teaching, 10 or 20 or 50 people at a time. We really need the pendulum to swing the other way.
I mean, if I'm just thinking of South Africa, we really, as South Africans, have to take responsibility for our own safety. I think one of the things that's very clear here, and I've been talking to a few people on podcasts from this region, is that we can't even if we wanted to, think about the police coming to our aid. It's just not going to happen here. I mean, ultimately, it really comes down to the fact that you're going to have to be responsible for your own safety.
Right, exactly. And we've never really talked about the energy and vibe in your country, which is incredibly violent. And we look at shit in the news, and people are horrified by this, but like, this sort of stuff has been going on for years in other countries. It's just finally happening with a frequency in America, in North America, that is rattling people. And it would be nice if the collective lessons learned enabled us to somehow shut it down. But first and foremost, like I always tell people, you're the first responder in your fight, and the people we call first responders are actually not the first responders if you're looking at the chronology of the violence and the timeline. And people need to develop we talk about responsibility, and we spell it with a hyphen, responsibility, i.e. the ability to respond. And a part of the problem, I think, also is demystifying stuff. You don't need to be a black belt to defend yourself. You just need to want to defend yourself. And that's what I meant earlier when I said don't confuse technical with tactical. I think through osmosis and again, social conditioning, watching action movies and, reading comic books and stuff like that, we think that the ability to protect yourself requires like years and years of investment, and it absolutely doesn't. You could be better, and I say could because you could be practicing stuff that actually makes it more difficult to defend yourself, or predisposing yourself to move to a place in a confrontation where what you needed to do is move away from the confrontation. And so a lot of this is some of the neuroscience and brain-based research we've been doing in the last few years, in understanding how the brain actually works and how you can motivate yourself to take action. All of this ties back to limbic system, reptilian brain, amygdala, and this is all about understanding fear.
I think you actually said this this whole idea of, like you were noting, that you don't need to be a black belt, so to speak, in order to defend yourself. I mean, I think, like I said, you noted this before, is that, in every part of the world, right this second, as we're talking, somewhere in the world, there is somebody that's facing interpersonal violence and surviving it, and that person more than likely has never done a single class in martial arts.
100%, man. The statistics are, in I think it was 1986, in my opening paragraph in an article for Inside Karate was that there are more people who defend themselves every day through sheer will and indignation, more so than there ever will be trained people who get attacked and successfully defend themselves. An interesting thing, and I did, people can Google this or you can link it in the interview, is I did for Caliber Press, a law enforcement training group, on their first podcast. We did a kind of an assessment or an AR of an assault on 3 Israeli soldiers in a marketplace, where the 3 soldiers, all in full kit, probably with the most authentic level of Krav Maga training you could have, plus they had long gun and handgun and knives and everything. 3 of them triangulate on one suspicious person. The guy's still able to get a knife out and stab the soldier in the throat in the middle, and then go after the other guys. And all of them startle, flinch, run away, right? Fortunately, there were a few other soldiers off to the side who introduced the guy to lead poisoning pretty quickly, but there was no complex motor skill. There was no martial arts. There was stimulus response. There was a whole, brain reaction. Like, when we tell people when a stimulus is introduced too quickly, it bypasses cognition. Everybody needs to learn this. And you come back to what you said, Rodney, is that what saved the other 2 soldiers was their startle flinch response and recoiling from danger, which is a hardwired response in every single human. And so we figured out a way to weaponize the flinch, and to teach people, most importantly, that we call it the 3 Ds: detect, diffuse, defend. Detect and avoid, defuse and de-escalate, and defend as if you've exhausted the first 2 Ds and you're still in the in danger. And so by breaking it down like that, you can teach people very, very quickly. In fact, it's a metaphor that I use, because a lot of the martial art, the reality-based martial art community and the traditional, they went nuts when I started saying, hey, you could learn. When we launched our Be Your Own Bodyguard course, I go, you could be safer in a day. And everyone went, you can't learn, to defend yourself in a day. I've been training for 10 years and I still get tapped out, blah, blah, blah. And I would tell people, I didn't say you could learn jiu-jitsu in a day. You can't learn Krav Maga in a day. You can't learn Thai boxing in a day. You can't learn judo in a day. But you can learn how to detect and avoid. You can learn how to use simple verbal de-escalation. And you could learn very, very simple core to extremity primal gross motor movements that everybody, can do right away. And so you can develop these skills, but you can't get in an octagon or a boxing ring or get on a tatami and compete. And so people confuse that. And the metaphor that I used to, hopefully reframe people was that I could teach you in 5 minutes how to use a fire extinguisher. And I could tell you where to place it in your house, and I could run you through some drills. And a half an hour later, you are safer, your family is safer. It doesn't mean you're a fireman. I could teach you CPR and how to apply a tourniquet and some life-saving skills in 4 or 5 hours. It doesn't make you a doctor. And so my whole thing is, and you know this, I've been involved in martial arts. I'm 57 years old now. I've been in martial arts, 50 years I've been doing stuff. I love martial arts. I'm a big fan of combat sports. I'm a big fan of any amazing athlete. But I don't confuse what I call the categories. I don't confuse traditional martial arts with combat sports. I don't confuse combat sports, reality-based self-defense. And I don't confuse all 3 of them with violent encounters in the street, where my only objective is to get to safety as quickly as possible.
So I was thinking about that example of the Israeli soldiers, and just one thing that kind of came to mind was that sometimes training can be your enemy. You know, how much of that actually, the reason that happened to them was that they likely thought, with all the gear that you described and the firepower that they had, that this guy wouldn't take them on. And so ultimately he did, right? And so in essence, as you were describing, clearly they must have had training, but sometimes, you know, as I noted, your training can be your greatest enemy.
Listen, you know, that's why we say careful what you practice. You might get really good at the wrong thing. And that's not a condemnation of your style or your martial art. It just means that you haven't looked at the totality of the scenario. If you don't understand the story, if you don't understand the blueprint of violence, like really how the architecture, how this is put together, you know, you can't get to the left of the ambush. Like everyone says that, get to the left of the X, left of the ambush. But then the training is all on the right of the ambush. Get it? Yep. It's like, hey, get to the left of the ambush. Okay, get me in a headlock. Watch how I get out of the headlock. Well, the headlock is the right of the ambush. Stopping the guy from getting anywhere near you where he might be able to put a headlock on you, punch you, or stab you, or shoot you, is really the objective. And while you want to practice all just in case, if you're truly going to choose safety and you truly understand, you know, how abhorrent violence really is, you really want to get really good at the D1, the detect and avoid part.
So, you know, just noting what you said now, what would be some of your concerns? And I guess we need to be careful here, but what are some of your concerns when you think about what's being put out currently in the reality-based self-defense space? Because I'm sure, you know, you watch the same YouTube videos that I watch, and some of it's worrying what gets put out there under the label of self-defense.
Yeah, so we need to be careful. Is that what you said? Listen, I said this yesterday during a talk. I said most of the people who teach self-defense shouldn't, period. And what I mean by that is like, so, you know, I've been CrossFitting for 11 years. I've gone to 6 or 7 CrossFit level 1 courses. I've hosted a bunch of them at my old facility in Virginia. And so people think that I'm a CrossFit coach, but I'm not. I just do it for myself. And so I get these emails asking for programming and questions about stuff. And I always say, hey, man, I'd love to help you, but really you want to go talk to a professional coach who does this. I never give anybody any like advice or tips or ever. In other words, I don't confuse, right? And like the metaphor I gave you before, I know to use a fire extinguisher. I'm not going to talk to somebody about, you know, fireproof gyprock, like, and building structure and where, you know, I don't understand everything that a firefighter or a, you know, fire expert would understand. The same thing with the you know, the medical and the tactical trauma and stuff like that. I know some basics to buy time, but I don't know the rest. So this is critical, is that you know, you might be a really good boxer, you might be really good at jiu-jitsu or some martial art, but have you really studied victims of violence? Have you really studied the legal, the emotional, the psychological? Do you understand, you know, how things are set up? Do you understand, you know, elements of how the amygdala and limbic system bypass the cognitive brain, where you store all your if then go to, you know, I'll do this if he does that. Do you understand, you know, how to help people convert that flinch, get back into the fight? One of the things that I use in breakout sessions is I'll get, you know, people in a group and I'll ask them to look at different dashboard videos, body cam, CCTV, and from all over the world, and to dissect it and analyze that. And what we notice is that if you couldn't see like the uniforms, or you didn't know who the good guy or the bad guy was, you didn't really see stylized movement. And so out of that type of exercise of kind of analyzing surveillance video, we tell people, hey, the lesson here is this: it's not what you believe, it's what we see. It's not what you believe, it's what we see. CTV tells everything. And so like that's a big thing, and it's a hard thing. Like when you invest, you know, time and money to get really good at stuff, you want that to be the answer. And so like every time there's some violent encounter, someone says, well, he should have studied jiu-jitsu. Oh, he should have had a gun. Oh, Krav Maga would have fixed that. And all of those systems and all of those styles have tremendous value. All of them offer great stuff, depending on the instructor. But they are the same thing as me buying you like a robust toolkit, but you don't understand anything about architecture. You don't understand anything about, assembly and design, but you have this amazing toolkit. And a lot of people, and I'm being as mindful and because listen, let me sidestep for a second. There are some amazing instructors out there, and there are some incredibly talented fighters out there. But I have, and I'm not going to mention names, consulted with and talked to people, high level people, who contacted me, and they want to understand the pre-contact psychology of the confrontation and the mindset during, and some of the some of the fear management. Now, what they have is access to a tremendous toolbox. But if they can, they need to pick up the danger, they need to manage their fear spike and get back in there. If you don't control that, you don't get to it. We've a pretty lewd expression that if you're scared shitless, unconscious, or dead, you don't get to your style. So the answer is yes. It's concerning because there's this, and this is one of the things when the post that I shared this morning after the shooting, where the guy said I was scared to death. And I know people are going to misread that, but to me, that was the most important thing he said. And I asked people to think about that the reality is that he was scared to death, but even though he was scared of dying, he still went towards the danger. All he did there is manage his fear. Now, this is a great example of what we're talking about. He was a former shooting instructor. He was an out-of-shape, overweight plumber now. But he still went and grabbed his gun and ran towards the danger and posted up on a car and shot this fucker. And all of that is an example of what I'm talking about, is that you need to be situationally aware, and then you're going to get a fear spike. And if you don't manage the fear spike, you very well may just stand exactly where you are, or cower or turn away and hide, when you need to be the courageous bystander. So if we dial that back and circle back to your question about, what's being taught out there is in my opinion, there's a lot of people who are teaching people how to use a hammer and a saw, but they're not teaching them how to build or understand architecture and understand you got to blueprint things. So I don't know if that metaphor works.
No, it does. The way that I think about it when I'm watching it, what I see is what is being put under the label of, say, self-defense is actually ego defense. Because coming back to something you said, and I'd like to maybe if you could talk a little bit about that, but almost never in any of these videos do I ever see the instructor talk about this idea of pre-contact psychology. It's always, this idea of, all you have is a hammer, then all you see is a nail. And it always seems like the only way to deal with any kind of interpersonal violence situation is with a physical response. As in, I need to physically use my body to eliminate this potential threat in front of me. Now, of course, there are going to be times when that is necessary and unavoidable, but I would like to make the argument, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this, that there's also this pre-contact phase, right, that you were talking about. And that is, if not more important, often, most of the times, but never gets taught.
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, I don't believe that all these guys are malicious. You can see, you see a video and you can go, when you see somebody's face and you go, I don't like that person. Because there's like this arrogance and this certitude oozing from them. So there's those guys. They're definitely out there, but they're in every industry. It just is amplified because now, it's about fighting. So it's even more macho and more testosteronery, I don't know, I just made up a word. But the rest of the people, I think they mean well and they're doing well. Listen, it's a hard thing right now because we live in this social media generation. I wrote an article for, the platform Medium The title was "You're Not Your Best Selfie," and it was this idea of like, just this what is the image and the facade you want to present. So in the how many likes do you have, how many followers do you have generation, people are putting out content, and they shouldn't be, but they can, because they can just film it and put it out. There's like no barrier, to entry, right? You just it's all free. Just get it up there. And it is scary. There's some scary stuff. Listen, a lot of the reality-based self-defense stuff is really what I call category 1. It's traditional martial arts in the sense that they're still working on complex motor skills. They're still saying, attack me like this, and I'm going to do this. And they're leaving out, and I just wrote an article last night, ironically, where I said, listen, you need to, and I'm trying to remember what I wrote, this section here, I'm paraphrasing it, but you can't just talk about detect and avoid. You can't just say situational awareness, verbal tactics. You actually need to practice that shit. And here's a story that I share almost in almost every single talk I do. Back in the 80s, doing a scenario-based session in Montreal, where I used to live, I said to everybody, look, the confrontation is going to happen here. At the first sign of danger, I want you to try to escape, or as soon as you can, break free and get to where we had our little registration juice bar, where you come into the gym, and it was maybe 20 or 30 feet away from where the force-on-force altercation was going to be taking place. And I said, I want you to, as soon as you can, you break contact and get to there. And this gentleman, who I'm still friends with to this day now, like 30 years later, he puts up his hand and he says, with all due respect, Mr. Blauer, we all know how to run. We came here to learn how to fight. And I looked at him and I said, sir, the fact that you don't even want to entertain doing this tells me that your ego and pride is going to get you in a lot of trouble. That you don't even, you don't know how to run. And this is a deeper distinction, because, like running from danger requires courage. Consider the irony here, how deep this is. Because when you run from danger, you think you're being a coward, but it takes courage to run from danger. There's a little Zen cone for some people to try and figure that out. And it's it's like his resistance to do that actually puts him in more danger. And I forced everyone, explained to everybody, no, you're going to practice running, and you're going to practice diffusing, and then you're going to practice defending. And so we would always spend tantamount time, not superficial time. And as I said this earlier, and it's worth repeating, everyone talks about getting to the left of the ambush, but spends most of their time on the right of the ambush. Meaning we say, yeah, situational awareness, get your hands up here, but then, break his neck like this, and rip out his heart and eat it like this. And everyone gets like attracted to that, what they think is the John Wick, Van Damme, Chuck Norris, cool shit. And it's not. And not only is it not, it just never even happens. If you actually look at real violence, nobody ever looks cool, and nobody ever looks like they're happy that they're there.
So that point of that gentleman saying to you, I'm here to learn how to fight, that might be part of the problem. I think a lot of times, people come to these schools and that's what they're insisting on, right? They're insisting on this particular instructor to teach them how to fight. I think because they perceive that that's what they need, that there aren't ever any alternatives given to them. And, what I experience too, though, even though I live in a very violent country, the vast majority of people who come into the studio haven't really been in real physical altercations, or at least not for some time. And so there's this perception that if a situation like that arose, the number one thing they want to learn is basically how to kick ass. I mean, that's kind of where their mindset is at. And so talking about, talking the way that you did takes them kind of, they take a step back. They're like, wow, exactly as that gentleman said, man, I came here to learn how to fight, not to learn how to run. And so you have to re-explain it to them that, as you noted, that it takes far more courage to move yourself away from violence than, having to engage in it when there is potentially an alternative to move away from it.
Rodney, I have had guys quit my school because we do too much talking about avoidance and verbal de-escalation, and they just want to learn how to fight. In fact, I've been it's been tricky, but weaning the word fight out of my nomenclature. I talk about it because I go, fighting conjures up images of combat sport and movement. I need us to be thinking about violent encounters and thinking about how asocial predators move and how they attack, because that's what we need to understand and look at. I don't need to worry about some Golden Glove boxer, shuffling up to me in the street. I'll see that coming. I got to worry about something completely different. But part of that is that, it's interesting. I remember, and I have a huge love of boxing. I remember when Sugar Ray Leonard set up when he in the rematch with Duran, and I remember one of the body shots he hit him with, and I knew that was it there. And and everyone, what they talked about was the no mas. They talked about this particular punch. They talked about that, and I started to notice this trend, and I did this kind of like a little intuitive survey, social experiment, if you will, back in the day before we had the internet and surveys. But I asked people, I go, hey, what was your favorite part of this fight? And everybody always talked about the knockout. And so it's an interesting thing when someone comes into your school and they go, hey, I want to learn how to fight like this. It's because what we naturally gravitate to, especially guys, but anybody, is we look specifically at the moment everything became clear what was going on. So it was the murder, it was the mugging, it was the rape, it was the knife, it was the gun. We don't look at the timeline and the chronology leading up to that. It's for most people, it's like, did you see that shooting happened? What would you do there? That bomb went off there. You see the car accident. We go, holy shit, look at that. But we don't think about, that the person left that party intoxicated and drove drunk and was texting and what happened 15 minutes before that. That's a big thing that we do in the training. We do a lot of whiteboard work where we go, well, what happened before this, before that made that happen, and so where everyone's like looking at stimulus response, well, if he does this, I'll do that, not realizing that in terms of physics and math, that may be impossible, right? If action beats reaction, and the bad guy is moving first because he's the ambush, right? That's, he's setting up, he's the ambusher. Then you can't just say, well, when he throws that punch, I'll do this block. It works in a controlled environment because you're cooperatively, working on, even if there's real speed and intensity, it's still a choreographed movement. And yeah, you need to explore that. Like when I talk about this stuff, there's so many people that turn off because they're selective listeners and they're going like, yeah, well, I'd like to see him do. That's not what this is about, man. It's about understanding what your brain sees. People ask me all the time, how important is speed? And this is another example like of our unconscious bias. When people ask me about speed, I ask them, well, what do you think about speed? And they always answer something about non-telegraphic motion or explosiveness, because the idea of speed, it connects to, again, how fast do you jab, how fast do you throw that elbow, how fast do you throw that kick, how fast do you draw your gun. And I go, yeah, well, speed is really important, but my speed is this speed. How fast can you pick up danger? How fast can you recognize that you just got a fear spike and it's creating emotional inertia? How fast can you convert that into mental movement where you can start telling yourself, neuromuscular communication, get off the X, move now, right? And so speed is everything, but it's not, the speed that most people talk about is the last part of the whole chain. So, I mean, there's a whole different world, like in the Matrix, which pill are you going to look at? There's a whole different world. But coming back to, and I don't even know when you answer that, it's like, when we say careful what you practice, you might get really good at the wrong thing. Practicing a certain way may predispose you to do the wrong thing, to fixate in a way that you've got kind of like this myopic tunnel vision that doesn't allow you to see, right? So, attack specific awareness is not the same as scenario specific awareness, and both have to be factored into the training.
So if we can, because we're coming up to the top of the hour, and maybe if we can kind of start ending off with maybe just a few tips, because you've been talking about, if I generalize the discussion, one of the things that came up a few times was this idea of pre-contact psychology, if somebody's listening to this, what are some of the takeaway tips that you can give them as far as understanding that a little bit more clearer?
So, we always leave each seminar with like 2 words that I tell people. I go, if you didn't get anything from this, just remember this. # choose safety. # choose safety. # Bart's a joke there. But but basically, if you choose safety, if that becomes the single focus in any confrontation, and don't confuse playing it safe with choosing safety. Sometimes the safest thing may be moving towards the danger, right? And so it's really kind of a very potent way to think about things. And I tell people that choose safety. So let's say you're in a scenario and you go, man, I got a bad feeling about that car that's following me. Choose safety. What is the safest thing you could do now? Drive to a police station, drive to a hospital, right? And so, people will say, well, that's stupid. Like, what if it's nothing? And I go, what if it's something? Like, you can make a mistake both ways, right? You can think it's something and choose safety, or you could assume it's nothing and continue going and then find out it was something. In the first case, like choosing safety just means you're going to be late for where you're going.
Yeah, it costs you a little bit of time, right? That's all it does.
Exactly, and maybe it's an embarrassing story. And it's interesting. I was doing a seminar at a CrossFit facility a couple of years ago, and I left them with hey, just choose safety. Always choose safety. Choose safety. Choose safety. Choose safety. And of course, understand like there's so much more. I mean, anybody who got to this part of this talk realizes there's a lot more than this. But I want to simplify it, in a way that it's not pedantic sounding, and I use that big word on purpose. Like it's not academic. It's like, and I got this call a week later from one of the attendees, who said to me, I got to tell you the funniest story. I think you can appreciate this. So I was closing up the gym. It was like a Friday night, 7:00. It was dark out. And I went to the front door, and as I was opening it, I saw a car in the parking lot, and I could see the light of a phone, emanating in this vehicle. And the parking lot was completely empty because we're in an industrial space. And I immediately got this fear spike, just like you said. And then I said, oh my God, like what's that person doing sitting in the car, lights off, the engine's not running, and I could see that they're on their phone. And she suddenly got really scared. So she locked the door and went back in, and, she got this adrenaline dump, and she goes into her office and she goes, okay, choose safety. What do I need to choose safety? Okay, I'm going to call my husband and tell him that he's got to get here like right away, because there's somebody in the parking lot. And so she calls her husband. He answers, and she says, she starts to tell him, there's somebody in the parking lot on their phone, and I'm really scared. Can you come pick me up? And he says to her, honey, it's me. I am picking you up tonight. And it was a true story, right? And it sounds so stupid, but what was amazing is I was so proud of her, because she didn't just go, oh, I live in a bubble. This is a safe neighborhood. I know everyone who works around here. Rodney, and you know this, but for your listeners, you bump into somebody who finds out that you teach self-defense, and you tell them, hey, where they can get some training. And the people that are vocal about rejecting it, like a lot of people just don't show up because they don't want to accept that the world can be dangerous. But there are some people that are vocalized. They go, listen, I don't really need that. I'm always at work, or I'm at home, and I'm either with my boyfriend or my husband. And I always look at them and I go, well, now that you put it that way, I just want to share with you that you only have a 100% chance of being a victim of violence. And you watch their eyes, boom, open wide, and they're like, what? I go, yes, statistically, if something's going to happen to you, it's going to happen on part of your routine, at your home or your house, by somebody you know.
Yep.
It's the anomaly of a random stranger. It really is the anomaly when you look at the totality of victims of violence. So, one of the things, when I end these podcasts, people leave us some tips, is like, hey, understand that fear is the fear that you feel, like the physiological changes, are not relevant to the choiceless choice in the situation that you're in, and that your breathing is messed up, or that your palms are sweaty, you got butterflies in your stomach. That's irrelevant. Look past that. What you need to do is dig into understanding the psychology of fear. And we've got a ton of free resources online about that. You just got to Google it. The other thing that I would tell people to do is really start researching breathing. And a buddy of mine, Brian McKenzie, does this great workshop called The Art of Breath. And there's a real strong relationship between physiology and fear and breathing. And so if you can get, and it's one of the things we tell people, just when they hit the fear loop, is the biggest thing they can do right there is make sure they don't start chest breathing and hyperventilating, because if you change the oxygen flow to your brain, you're not going to be thinking clearly. So simple things that you can do as a takeaway from this is always choose safety. If you pick up a bad feeling, you're walking down the street, you're driving, change your route, change your direction, go somewhere that's safe, and do that throughout all 3 Ds: detect and avoid, choose safety; defuse and de-escalate, choose safety. That means, I can look at somebody and go, "What the fuck you looking at, asshole?" And that's not going to de-escalate things, right? That's going to, fan off the flame a bit. And so, what are some, more tactical and strategic things that you can say? And I'm not going to get into, that's a whole other podcast to get into that strategy. And then when you're, when it's time to defend yourself, like should you be doing a jump back kick here? Should you double leg the person, take him to the ground? I mean, what's the scenario? And so it's the same thing there. Regardless of whether you're trained or untrained, you should choose the safest thing to do when it's time to get violent, when it's time to get physical and protect yourself. So that's the big one is to choose safety and embrace the fear. It's going to be there, and there are things in life that you got to do scared. You just got to do it.
I love it. Just as a side note there for people listening, if they want to go into this aspect of breath more, there's actually 2 podcast episodes on the playlist that focus on that specific topic. Just to end off though, Tony, just where can people find out more about you and your programs? Where can they go on the web?
Just the easiest places are our website, Blauer SPEAR, BLAUER SPEAR.com, BlauerSpear.com. And I do have, I post a lot of stuff. I write a lot on Instagram, and I've got a few channels there. Tony Blauer, where you'll see a combination of self-defense, things I eat, and political rants. But then there's the SPEAR.system, and from there you'll see all the tags. You'll see what we have to offer.
Fantastic. I appreciate the time, Tony, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy our talks, Rodney. They're always provocative, and hopefully your listeners, walk away with some more nutrition for the brain.
I'm sure they will.
To find out more about our sponsor, Crazy Monkey, go to crazymonkeydefense.com, or to become a trainer, check out mastercrazymonkey.com. Until the next show, get out there and right hook life.